When a major moment happens, a synchronized choreography instantly begins. Phones are unholstered to document the experience. But if you are the person quietly watching the room with zero desire to upload or curate your existence for digital strangers, you aren't a stubborn technophobe. Your brain is operating on an entirely different frequency than the 4.9 billion people glued to their screens. In fact, it actually looks physically different on an fMRI scan. Sociologists classify this growing demographic as the voluntary offline. As Stanford psychiatrist Dr. Anna Lemke's research on digital rewards suggests, the reason you don't feel the pull isn't just about having more willpower. You have instinctively protected a neurochemical baseline that most of society surrendered without even realizing it was a transaction. Let's look at how we got here, because the contrast is jarring. If you grew up in the transitional era of technology, you remember the exact physical texture of the before world. You remember the tactile, satisfying click of typing T9 predictive text on a silver Motorola Razor in 2005. You remember the heavy mechanical whir of the family desktop computer booting up. You remember logging onto AIM on a dial-up connection, setting a deeply angst-away message, and then actually walking away from the keyboard to go ride a bike or stare at your ceiling. Even early social media had boundaries. In 2012, you might take a blurry, horribly lit photo of a physical red Netflix DVD envelope, slap the heavy Valencia filter on it, post it to a chronological feed, and then close the app for 3 days. It was a secondary tool. It had a beginning, a middle, and a definitive end. But by 2026, that world has been completely vaporized. The chronological feed was replaced by the algorithmic slot machine, and the tool became the master. This brings us to the actual science of why you feel so alienated by modern platforms. Social media is built entirely on a psychological concept called a variable ratio schedule of reinforcement. This is the exact same operant conditioning mechanism engineered into casino slot machines. You pull the lever or swipe the glass screen, and you don't know if you're going to get a reward or how big that reward will be. It is entirely unpredictable. Unpredictability spikes dopamine in the human brain more drastically than a guaranteed reward, creating a loop of constant, desperate craving. Your brain, however, has rejected the slot machine. But that is not the most interesting part of your psychology. The real superpower of the voluntary offline lives in a neural network called the default mode network, or the DMN. Your DMN is the part of your brain that activates when you are doing absolutely nothing. It turns on when you are staring out a rain-streaked window on a train, when you are folding laundry in silence, or when you are taking a long drive without a podcast playing. Psychologists know that the DMN is the exact place where human creativity, deep empathy, and complex future planning are born. Constant, frictionless scrolling suppresses the DMN entirely. Heavy social media users are essentially starving their brain's ability to wander, leaving them perpetually stimulated, but creatively bankrupt. Because you don't instantly reach for your phone, the second you feel a tiny pang of boredom in a grocery store checkout line, your default mode network is highly active. You still know how to sit safely alone with your own thoughts. You can let a complex, difficult idea marinate for longer than a 15-second attention window without needing an escape hatch. But let's be incredibly honest for a second. Let's talk about the dark side of this choice, because pretending it is entirely peaceful and easy is a lie. Opting out of the ecosystem has a very real, very heavy social cost. It gets exceptionally lonely. When you don't exist on social media, people unconsciously assume you don't want to be invited. You miss the casual, low-stakes party updates. You miss the career networking that happens entirely in direct messages. You fall completely out of the cultural loop. When someone references a viral moment or a trending audio that everyone else in the room instantly understands, You have to sit there in silence, feeling like a foreigner in your own hometown. There is also a quiet, pervasive assumption from others that you think you are better than them. They project an air of superiority onto you, assuming your digital absence is a silent judgment of their constant presence. And let's hold a mirror up to ourselves. Sometimes, people do delete their accounts for the wrong reasons. Sometimes it is not about finding peace, but about hiding from the arena. It is fear disguised as a philosophical boundary. If you are hiding because you are terrified of being perceived, or because social anxiety has completely paralyzed you, that is a cage, not a sanctuary. But if you are avoiding it because you simply look at the digital circus and feel nothing but deep, bone-level exhaustion, that is not hiding. That is cognitive sovereignty. You have realized something fundamental about human connection that took the rest of us years to figure out. You understand that social media is not actually social. It is a performance. It is a ruthless marketplace where intimate moments are commodified into consumable content. Every post is a tiny, desperate audition for approval. When you opt out, you are reclaiming what psychologists call intrinsic motivation. Most heavy social media users are trapped in a loop of extrinsic motivation. They need an external metric, like a view count or a glowing comment section, to validate that their weekend trip was actually fun. You don't need a digital receipt to prove you enjoyed your own life. The experience itself, the quiet joy of it, is the entire reward. If you are the person who constantly has to tell coworkers or friends, "I don't have that app, just text me the video," let me know down in the comments. I see you, and I promise you are not the only one navigating this friction. Let's look at the brutal math of what you are actually saving by stepping away. The average screen time strictly for social media consumption right now sits at roughly 2.5 hours a day. That is 17.5 hours a week. That is 912 hours a year. 38 full days. Every single year, the average person spends over a month of their waking life staring down at a glowing rectangle, watching other people live curated versions of lives they don't even actually lead. Because you have opted out, you get those 38 days back in your pocket. You are handed an extra month of life every single year. What do you do with it? You read physical books. You make uninterrupted eye contact. You pursue strange, quiet hobbies that absolutely nobody will ever praise you for. You create things purely for the sake of creating them. You exist without an audience. And because you exist without an audience, you are completely immune to the modern epidemic of hyper-comparison. Every algorithm is strictly optimized to show you the top 0.1% of human beauty, extreme wealth, and impossible success. It is designed by behavioral engineers to manufacture envy, because envious people feel empty, and empty people buy things to feel whole again. You have stepped out of the comparison arena entirely. When you are not constantly bombarded with algorithmic evidence of how inadequate your life supposedly is, a very quiet, profound shift happens in your psyche. You start to actually like your life. You begin to accept your ordinary, unfiltered, beautifully mundane reality. You build real, lasting memories instead of curating disposable content archives. Studies on memory consolidation show that when people take photos specifically to share them online, their actual cognitive recall of the physical event diminishes. Their brain effectively offloads the memory to the device, telling the hippocampus it doesn't need to do the heavy lifting. You are not doing that. When you watch a sunset, you are actually encoding the specific colors, the temperature of the air, and the exact sound of the people around you deeply into your mind. You are experiencing the world, not capturing it for a portfolio. If you have a friend who randomly dropped off the grid who never posts their achievements, but who texts you deeply thoughtful, 3-paragraph messages instead of forwarding you mindless reels. Send this video to them. They need to hear that their wiring is a rare and vital gift. Because we live in a society that has normalized continuous partial attention. Everyone is half here. Everyone has 1 foot in the physical room and 1 foot in the digital ether, waiting for a phantom vibration in their pocket to tell them they matter. When you give someone your undivided, silent attention in 2026, it almost feels unnerving to them at first. It is so rare that it feels like a luxury good. You have retained the fragile human ability to give someone your absolute, unbroken presence. And that is your ultimate leverage in this economy. Your attention is the single most valuable asset you possess. Billion-dollar tech conglomerates spend endless resources, hiring the smartest minds of our generation just to extract it from you. By keeping your attention for yourself, you are quietly executing the most radical rebellion of the modern age. You are not weird. You are not a snob. You are not missing out on the world. While everyone else is busy performing their existence for an audience of distracted ghosts, you are doing the one thing they forgot how to do. You are actually living it. If this made you feel a little less alone in the way you navigate the world, consider subscribing. And if this is you, just keep living. I'll see you in the next one.